Hey everyone, Tin Man here. In my previous video I discussed the nuts and bolts of actually playing a game of Dota Underlords, but I did not get into too much strategy. This will be the first in a series of videos about the core concepts and ideas of playing Dota Underlords at a higher level. This video is based heavily on a guide that I wrote for qihl.gg, link in the description below. The most important thing for newer players to understand is proper gold management. Experienced players will be better at optimizing their gold usage and maximizing their income over the course of the game. There are a few ways to generate gold. You get a baseline 5 gold per turn after the opening rounds, but you also gain 1 extra for winning a round, up to 3 extra for winning or losing streaks, and up to 5 extra based on the amount of gold that you have unspent in the form of interest. The more gold you have, the higher levels you can reach, the more rerolls you can use, the better army you can assemble, and the higher placement you're going to get. Let's go through the game phase by phase and discuss how you should handle your gold at each point. In the early game, since no player can really be eliminated in the first 15 rounds, the primary goal here is to set yourself up for later in the game. In the very early game, you'll not have a chance to generate much interest, since saving to 10 or 20 is not realistic. Instead, the priority should be on win and loss streak bonuses. Ideally, you want a win streak so that you'll get the winning the round bonus gold plus the win streak gold, but that will not be possible every game. Only 1 or 2 players per game will realistically be able to go on an early game win streak. The key to a successful early game is understanding when this player can be you, and when it's better to intentionally set yourself on an early game losing streak in order to gain additional gold for your mid-game comeback. The worst possible thing to do in the early game is to alternate between wins and losses against your opponents. This prevents you from going on winning streaks and on losing streaks, which means that you'll be entering the mid-game with the lowest possible amount of gold. If you're trying for a win streak, spend gold aggressively leveling up to maintain the win streak. But if you're on a losing streak, try to bank excess gold for interest, and do not worry about leveling up early on. You should avoid rerolling this early, even if on a winning streak. Instead, spend gold on leveling up. Rerolls have no guarantee of an upgrade, but level ups will always improve your army. You can start rerolling at level 7, but preferably wait until level 8. Regardless of whether you're shooting for an early win streak or losing streak, don't be afraid to constantly buy and sell heroes in the early game. So long as you aren't able to hold 10 or more gold in your bank, there's no downside to spending all of your gold on pieces in order to maximize your chance of hitting an early game pair or synergy. Pieces can be sold back for full value, so it's much better to keep your option open and stay flexible in the early game than it is to fully commit yourself to a specific build or strategy. So how do you know if you can go on an early win streak? Well, here's the profile of a typical game with a winning streak with some benchmarks that can help you determine if an early win streak is likely. By round 4, the first PvP round, you have at least 1 2-star unit and or have completed a 3-unit alliance, such as Warriors, Hunters, or Scrappy Inventor. You also have strong items with good combat abilities like Claymore, Vitality Booster, or even a global item that improves combat power like Unstable Reactor. By round 5 and 6, you have spent 5 gold to level up to level 5. You have at least 1 2-star unit and a strong alliance. If you do not have a strong alliance, you should have at least 2 2-star units at this point. The rest of your army should consist of strong individual pieces, such as demons, or strong 2 or 3 cost pieces. By round 9, if you still have a win streak, and think that you can maintain it, spend another 5 gold to level up to 6. Ideally, you have at least 2 2-star units and possibly a 3rd. You have a strong alliance, and you have a good unit to put in as your 6th. On round 10, if you get the option of an Aegis of the Immortal, you could consider taking it, as it'll give you some leeway to lose a fight and still maintain the win streak. On round 13, if you still have the win streak at this point and have not spent any rerolls, you're likely to have between 20 and 30 gold. Compare your army to the next strongest players. If you're dramatically stronger than them, you can sit on your gold and ride the win streak. If it's close though, you might want to consider spending 15 gold here to level up to 7 and ensure that you continue to win, since the win streak will make up for the lost interest. This is risky though, as the worst case scenario is to level up but then lose, costing you your win streak and your interest. So only level up if you really think it can ensure victory. By round 17, you're out of the early game, and if you still have a win streak, you're up to 50 plus gold. Most other players will level to 7 on this round, and will likely be able to challenge your win streak, unless you level up to 8, which is very expensive. It's probably better to move on to the mid-game priorities that I'll talk about later, rather than solely focusing on maintaining a win streak at this point. On the flip side, if you're looking at an early losing streak, here's a profile of a typical game with that. By round 4, you've not found any 2-star units or strong alliances. Maybe you chose items like Embarrassment of Riches, Brooch of the Martyr, or Cloak, which have more value later in the game. More experienced players may opt for an open fort strategy at this point, where they sell all of their units to have 10 gold for interest. But this is not recommended for newer players, as it's a very complex strategy to execute properly. Instead, focus on making the best team that you can, and when it's not good enough, so be it. By round 7, your luck is still not turned around. You have no 2-star units, and you've lost every round. You have not leveled up to 5 at this point. Look at the other players at the bottom of the standings and see how strong or weak they are. You want to ensure that you continue to lose, possibly by playing less than the maximum number of units. If your opponents are using an open fort strategy and not playing any units at all, you might accidentally win against them and mess up your losing streak, so be aware. By round 9, you'll naturally level up to 5, but you may want to play less than 5 units to ensure you continue to lose. Ideally, you have between 20 and 30 gold saved up at this point for interest. By round 13, if you're still on the losing streak, you can spend 5 gold here to level up to 6. You're probably down to 50 to 60 life by now, and you need to stem the bleeding a little bit and avoid dropping below 40. You should ideally have 50 gold for maximum interest at this point. By round 15, depending on how weak you are, you may want to level up to 7 to ensure that you beat the creep round, even if it costs some interest. By round 17, you should be at level 7 by now, and spend some rerolls trying to end your losing streak. If you do drop below 40%, you may need to do this earlier than round 17. It can take several rounds to improve your army enough to start winning, and so you don't want to wait till it's too late, like say below 30% to start rerolling. It could very well be too late. Regardless of how well you did in the early game, with a win streak, loss streak, or neither, by the mid game you should be aiming to win every round, as the damage taken starts to ramp up. The mid game is also where your overall strategy will start to come into clear focus, but I'll discuss how to build compositions and those strategies in a future video. In terms of gold management, the mid game is a delicate balance of accumulating the most interest possible while also fielding a strong army. The strategy that you take depends on how much life total you have. The more life you have, the more greedy you can get in accumulating interest and planning for the late game. If you have a high life total, say above 70 at this point, you want to get above 50 gold and only spend the excess every round to level up and buy units. You still want to minimize rerolls at this point, as you don't really need too much improvements on your army. Level up to 7 on round 17 and then level up to 8 on round 21 or later, ensuring that you keep at least 40 gold for interest each time. Focus on setting up strong late game compositions like say 4 trolls and 4 knights, 6 hunters, or 3 dragons, as you'll likely get to level 9 or 10 this game. Also, you want to get 4 cost units to 2-star. These are much more powerful than other 2-star units and are the defining units in their respective strategies. Adapt your plan according to what 4 cost units you can get. If you have a medium life total, say between 40 and 70, you still want to level up to 7 on round 17 and level 8 on round 21, trying to keep at least 30 gold for interest each round. You may need to spend some rerolls to keep your composition competitive and to avoid losing too much more life. You want to focus on building compositions that work well with just 8 units, as you may or may not be able to get to level 9 this game depending on how well you do. Only pick up 4 cost units that fit well with your current units and strategy, as you're unlikely to be able to completely swap strategies at this point. If you're at a low life total, say sub 40, level to 7 on or before round 17 and level up to 8 on or before round 21. You're going to want to spend gold aggressively to reroll for key upgrades, ideally on the more powerful 3 and 4 cost units. You want to build compositions that are strong right now, as you would almost certainly not level up to 9 this game, as you're way too low on life total. If you drop below 25 life, you want to consider going all in, spending as much of your gold as possible trying to find those upgrades, completely disregarding interest. If you had to go all in the mid game to keep your head above water, you will likely not be able to do much in the late game, other than reroll every turn just trying to find the last upgrades you need, and then maybe survive another turn or two. But if you manage to make it to the late game with a reasonable life total, say above 35, or a very strong 8-unit composition after going all in, your next priorities are to figure out when to level up to 9 and possibly 10. When you level up is much dependent on how much gold you have still banked, since leveling up to 9 costs a lot of gold. The popular times to level up to 9 are between rounds 29 and 33. On exactly round 29 and 33 is when your experience has a natural multiple of 4, which means it's the most efficient time to level up so you do not overspend on experience into the next level. Round 31 is directly after a creep round and is used when your low enough on life total that you don't think you can wait to round 33. And you did not have enough gold to level up earlier on round 29. Leveling to 10 is much the same as leveling to 9, but it comes at an even greater gold cost. It's generally not recommended to level to 10 unless you have a lot of gold and life total, and you already have every unit on your board leveled to 2-star. If you have a few units that are not 2-star, it's often better to use your gold to keep rerolling at level 9 to find those upgrades, rather than to level to 10 just to put another 1-star unit in. Generally, this will happen sometime between rounds 33 and 41, but it could occur earlier if you're doing very well and do not need to reroll too much. So that's most of what you need to know regarding proper gold management, which is one of the most critical concepts to master early on. The next video I'll talk about how to properly build compositions and how to choose which units to use at different stages of the game. Be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up to date with all the upcoming Dota Underlords content. Thanks for watching.